Hi, everybody. So glad you could join me today. Um, I almost forgot to turn the volume down on that. Okay. Hi, Trisha. How are you? Hi, Tanya and Danielle and Marguerite and Jen and Judy and Teresa. Nice to see you all today. So this is my take on the What's Cookin' retro kitchen theme paper collection that Tammy created. And it was a joy to work with. I loved every second of it. And so, if any of you that know me know that I am not a baker. I like to cook a meal, but I don't typically. Look what the banner says. Oh, let's move that out of the way. Thank you, Tanya. Let's hide that. There we are. Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate that. So, those that know me know I am not a baker. I am not a person that bakes cookies, cakes, pies, any of that stuff. But I love to collect the recipes, and I have lots of them. And I love my recipes in paper form because that's just how it is. So I got thinking about the project. Hi, Charisse. Hi, Peggy. And what I decided to do was, because I also am not a person that's going to stick my recipes in a book, I decided I wanted to do something that had lots of pockets in it. And I wanted mine to be big. I wanted it to be chunky because I know what's going to happen. I'll end up with an alligator mouth. So this is what I came up with. So I'm just going to move that paper out of our way. And because it's chunky and it's not filled with recipes right now, of course, it's a little wonky still. But this is what I came up with. I came up with an album that measures, because we're just going to do a quick walkthrough before we get started, 7.5 by 8.5. And it has this whopping 4.5-inch spine because I wanted lots of rooms for the recipes. So right now it kind of folds down because, of course, I don't have any recipes in it yet. So I'll just hold it up, just give you a little quick walkthrough. I made some flowers, and those of you that know me know I like to make flowers. I use the paper. If you haven't seen me make flowers, I know I'll be making them again. If we have time at the end of this, I might make a few. I had some Tim Holtz utensils in my stash, this little wooden mixer in my stash. I used 2 colors of twine. So I used the ivory and I think it's the natural that Tammy has in the store, a little bit of seam binding, and I called it good with layering 2 pieces of the design paper together and popping them up to give some dimension. So I kept my cover simple because I always go with the idea, all right, I don't want my cover to get wrecked as I'm using it. So when we open it, what we have on the front inside pocket, or inside of the front cover, is an acetate pocket. And then what I did is I used one of the cut aparts, and hopefully the only thing I would do different is I would mat this on a piece of black paper. That's the only thing. And I'm probably going to take it off and redo that. So a friend of mine was here, and she said, I was showing this to her, and she said, I love the fact that you have big recipe pages, because she says, what I hate doing is I want all my instructions on one side. I don't want to have to flip it over once my fingers are all dirty. Actually, I made these just to fit the pockets and this acetate pocket. But after she said that, I kind of went, what a great idea. I did not put an accordion hinge on my acetate pocket. You certainly could if you wanted to, because I thought this would be a great place to showcase that one recipe that is your what you're famous for kind of deal. Yeah, this is from the cut aparts. Of course, this is from the cut aparts. I just had paper pieced around the outside of the acetate pocket. I kept it simple because those of you that know me, I like less. I don't need my albums to be full of foo-foo. I like less. So This is a very simple page construction. There are 5 pages. They basically are all the same. I'll just quickly go through them so you can see the pattern paper in case you're going to decorate it just like mine. Every page has a magnetic closure on it, so all your recipes stay in their pocket. So it opens, it's nice and big, and that's what I was going for. Excuse me, nice and big. I just slipped 2 blank ones in the pocket just to get me started. The other thing I should tell you about this album is I have given you 2 sets of measurements for the spine and for the hinges. One I'm referring to as the chunky version, which is this one. And the one I'm going to make today, I'm calling it the slim version. I will make sure that I post the PDF of all my little words, just in case somebody wants to use them. And all I did is I had a paper punch, punched them out. Then I just took a piece of black cardstock, measured it to fit, and used that just to give the album a little bit of flow to it. So the front of page 1, the back of page 1, and I knew where those went. It should have a couple of these in here. Is a belly band. And again, the idea is maybe you like to plan your meal out. Well, you could pull your recipe out of this side and then stick it in the back. And then you know for each course what it is you want to be making, etc. The other idea I thought this would be really good for, you know how we have showers, like the wedding shower, and sometimes you bring a recipe to the wedding shower? Wouldn't this be a cool idea to give this as the gift, and everybody brings a recipe, puts it in the book for the bride? Just a thought. Hi, Debbie. So glad you could join us. RJ, nice to see you. So it just keeps repeating. Every page, like I say, is the same. So there's the belly band pulled out, or the paper's pulled out. Opens again. 3/4 of an inch gusset on this one because this is the chunky version. And then the back of this one. The front of page 3. The back of page 3. I'm just going to pull these out so you can see how I matted it. Maybe I'll do this. Hi, Debbie. And then the front of page 4. And I kept it simple. This was just some ribbon I had in my stash and the black seam binding from Tammy's store. I just fussy cut out about around all of the cut parts. So main dishes, and then the back, and then of course desserts. I didn't say I didn't love desserts. I love desserts. It's just I don't make desserts, or make very few. And if Sally was here, she'd be saying, and it's true, she doesn't make cookies. And then that pulls out. So that's the front of page 5. And the back of page 5. And then there's another pocket in the back because I wanted lots of storage for the recipes. And then, of course, the back. And like I say, I just cut this out, popped it up. And that basically is what we're going to make today. So it's easy peasy. It's not going to be a head cruncher. So let's get started, and hopefully we can get this all done and assembled in 2 hours. That's what I'm working on, is that 2 hours from now, I'm off of here. So going to move my album to one side and bring over my instructions. I did post the cutting guide in a brief description of what we're doing. I will make sure that goes down in the guides. I guess it's up there. The guides under 19, that's where I've been posting all these live tutorials I've been doing for Tammy. So we're going to get started. We're going to get the cardstock out so you can get those measurements. I'm wondering how many are working with me and how many are just going to be watching, because that'll sort of give me a time for, or tell me what type, how I should get my time organized. So remember, I'm making the slim version today. The one I showed you is the chunky version. So this would be for somebody that doesn't have a lot of recipes. Or maybe what you want to put in it is you want to put your grandma's recipes in it. That's another cool idea too. So in the slim version, the spine is 3 by 8.5. And I'm just using the chipboard that Tammy sells in the store. Okay, Marguerite, good to know. And then I cut 2 pieces that are 7.5 by 8.5. Okay, RJ, good to know. And I'm going to use, hi Trisha, I didn't see you come in. I'm going to use the score sheets today to create this. Okay, good to know. So I'll kind of go at my own pace. And I didn't put measurements in the on the banners because I've had some of my friends tell me it takes away from what you can see. So we're just going to do this instead. So my chipboard pieces are, for the covers, 7.5 by 8.5. So I'm going to do one cut here, and then I'm going to do the other one. Just for time. And then I'm sure you guys all know about laying down your adhesive sheets. Hi, Virginia. Nice that you could join us. So I'm just going to lay it here. Actually, I'm going to turn. I didn't have to turn it around. It's all the same side. It's okay. Just so I can see what I'm doing without my head getting in the shot. And then, okay, thank you. Yes, it will stay recorded. Tanya, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And then we're just going to get my, I know I can cut on my mat for my scoreboard, but I don't. I have this other mat that I've already used for cutting. So there's one. Score sheets make it go so quickly. And we'll get the second one. So we've kind of got a cool day here today. It's been nice this week. And now today it was cool. It's cool. It was windy this morning. I don't know if it's going to rain. I know there was talk of rain. We could use it. And there's number 2. And hopefully maybe we can cut one of these down. I think we can. Yes, most definitely it's available. Yes, I totally get it, Tina. I like to pause too when I'm watching somebody's tutorial because I don't catch it all on the first go round. Get that put away so I don't need it anymore. And then remember again, I'll tell you, I'm making the slim version. So when you look at those measurements or the guide that I posted and what will be in the description down in the guide, I guess. And I still needed it because I forgot about this little piece. There we go. And there's our pieces ready to burnish. Put this away. We don't need it anymore. It's just easier that way, Julianne, is just to gives you the opportunity to go back, stop it, and maybe you just want to see that one little thing that the designer did. That way you can. So that's the nice thing about the lives is we have the ability to go back and watch it multiple times. And of course, what I like about the lives is I get to interact with you guys. Well, thank you, Tanya. We're going to start with our spine cardstock, and it measures 6 by 10.5. And remember, the easiest way, or the easiest way I have found, and I think it was Tammy that mentioned this in one of her tutorials, is whatever the width of your spine chipboard piece is, add 1.5 inches to either side. And then that takes away the math. I'm going to get my spacers out. I need this one, so I need a 1 inch and I need a 1.5. And we burnish this nicely. Yes, it just depends on whether I have any score sheets. Sometimes I don't, and then I have to use tape. But it'll get the job done. So I'm laying down my spine. So what this is, for those of you that don't know what I'm using, sometimes I just think everybody knows what I'm talking about. I get on my merry way, but I shouldn't. So Tammy sells the spacers in the store. They come as a set of 3. You have 2 that are 1 inch and one that is 1.5. And they are amazing. They take a lot of frustration out of wrapping your chipboard, and I love them. So we're going to fold over our cardstock, and we're going to get my burnishing tool out here. And we're going to do the other end. And then we're going to go this way. Now, because this is the spine, we're also going to fold our chipboard the other way on the 2 long sides. And that's just kind of to say to this piece of cardstock, you're going to be working in 2 different directions. Get ready. Okay, and there we go. And then I'm going to get my scissors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the 4 rectangles. And I typically just cut on my fold line, because if I've got any bump or anything, I will get rid of that when I do my mitering. And I like to cut up to about 1/16 of an inch away from the chipboard. And some of that is trial and error. Sometimes it works really, really well for myself. And then other times it does not. Okay, and last one. Now, because I'm remembering today, I'm going to do this part before I start doing my mitering. And get these up here so I have them handy. I want to now take my burnishing tool and I am going to burnish my cardstock. So I'm working on the good side and I'm burnishing my cardstock right along the edge of that chipboard. And what this is doing is it's going to help when we have our wings, which I'll show you in a second. It just helps when we're laying the spine up against the front cover and the back cover. So I just like to do that now to remind myself. I'm going to do it a couple of more times. I know that for sure. And I'm using some dry adhesive. I believe this is 1/2 inch. I'll measure it in a second. Once I get my little tiny modified Tim Holtz ruler out here. Yes, it's 1/2 inch. I like to also put a little strip of it right along, but not right up to the chipboard. And I prefer to use dry adhesive for this because then I know when I attach the front and back covers, they're attached. I don't have to wait for drying time with the liquid glue, etc. And I'm one of these that sometimes it takes me a long time to decide to do something different. And I find when I have used the glue, it's awfully messy. But I've gotten better. I don't use nearly as much score tape on my albums as I once did. Okay, and we're just going to put a 1/4 inch in between them. This is definitely optional. But if you know me, you know I like to use a fair amount of adhesive, be it liquid or be it dry. All right, so let's move this. Let's give these a good burnish. And then we'll do our mitering. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to miter these 1-inch tabs at the top and the bottom of the spine piece. And again, I'm going to remind you, I am doing the slim version of this album today. The one I showed you at the beginning is the chunky version. And so that's the only thing you have to decide. Do you want a chunky album? Do you have a lot of recipes? You know what, Tina? Just drop it on the floor a few times. That's all you have to do. You just need to drop it on the floor. Take my word for it. And then have a sweet husband that will then take it outside. And I'm not even sure what tool he used to fix it. So that I have my 6-inch version. Let's get, 6-inch version along this side. And then as I call it, it's kind of like 3 3/3, give or take. Almost 4, not quite. But it works really nicely for ripping the tape. Hi, Sandy. How are you today? Nice that you could join us. And then we're just going to keep going. Mine won't break. Just keep dropping it, Tina. Just keep dropping it. Sooner or later, or you know what? Just stand on one end of it. I didn't say that, did I? So this is what you should be left with. And I'm going to show you on the wrong side so the tape's not in our way. So we've mitered all the edges. And I'm going to give it another little burnish. Just because that's what I think I should do. I'm going to need those again. Going to get out my liquid glue. Yes, it is Friday. But see, because I'm retired, I don't get so excited about Fridays anymore. Because every day is a Friday for me. And I'm not rubbing it in, ladies. I would never do that. I worked a lot of years to be able to say I have Fridays every day. And I loved my job, but I'm glad that I don't have to go every day. Hi, Heather. Oh, is it freezing for anybody else? Hopefully it's not. I'm not rubbing it in, Sandy. Promise. I don't know, Heather. Maybe go out and try to come back in because nobody else. Oh, okay. Sorry about the phone, Heather. All right, so we're going to set the spine aside and let it dry, because that's critical with this, that our spine gets a chance to, or the cardstock on the spine gets a chance to dry. And we're going to move on to the cover itself. And so you're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 9.5 by 10.5. And if you haven't noticed it already, I am using black. Should have mentioned that at the top of this. This time we don't need the 1.5, so I'm going to put that away. move this over here for a second and get my spacers in place. Remove the backing from the chipboard. And again, we're just butting it up. And if you don't have spacers, you can always make some spacers out of the chipboard. But if you can get your hands on the plastic, I think they're plastic, acrylic. I'm not sure what they're made out of. Tanya, do you know? I don't know if Tammy's watching today. I'm not sure what, or maybe Sandy, do you know what they're made out of? I don't know if there's any other design team members watching today. So we're burnishing the back. And let's put the adhesive on the other. Hi, Christy. I know, Teresa. Acrylic. Thank you, Heather. I'm just never sure what they're made out of, so I usually wait for somebody. Thanks, Debbie. I didn't see you come in. So nice that you're here. I'm home. Awesome. Were you away, Christy? Or did I misread that? No, I didn't think she was, Tanya. Because I hadn't seen her, but I thought I'd just throw the question out there. Because I sometimes miss things. Is it cool in Connecticut? Or Kentucky, I should say. It's pretty cool here, too. So we're going to start wrapping our chipboard now that we've got both our chipboard pieces we covered with cardstock. Fold it over. Give it a good burnish. Do the same to the other end. And remember, I'm using Artisan, so I know how hard. Low 80s. Oh, I could only wish it was low 80s here. But then we really need rain. So, because if we don't get the amount of moisture we need to have, we're going to have fires this summer, and I don't like the fires. No, thank you. I'm going to kind of do an assembly. I'm going to fold this one over. Thanks, Tanya, for doing that. I appreciate it, because I didn't think about that until almost go time. It was a busy morning in this house today. Actually, it's been a busy week. So, Christy, are you in the Okanagan? Or you're just in a place that's very dry in the summer too? What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the 4 corners. So I'm cutting out the little squares I created. And again, just like with the spine, I just cut up to about 1/16 of an inch from that chipboard. And remember, this is the this is not the lightweight chipboard Tammy sells in the store. This is the heavier version of that. I think she marks it as heavy. It's the chipboard that says can be used for album covers. There, that's the way I'm going to say it. And again, so we'll work on this one first, and then we'll work on the other one. So we're going to fold over and miter. Now we want to make sure that Bonnie remembers to miter all of her corners. Or tabs, I guess is what I should call these, because that's really what they are. Oh, yes. Yes, if you're in a part of the world that's dry or has been dry, You want that rain because you don't want any fires, and I totally get it. Some of you that know me know that I live in British Columbia, Canada, in the Okanagan, and it gets very dry here in the summertime. Just above Washington State. So if you've ever been to Spokane, Washington, it's kind of a similar temperature-wise and weather-wise. You know what, Trisha? My mom just lives in Ontario, that's just north of you a bit, and they've had quite a bit of rain. So what I'm doing is I ran a bead of art glitter glue right along the edge of the cardstock up against the chipboard, and then I put glue all over that 1-inch tab, and now I'm folding it over. We're going to give it a good burnish. Ah, you're very close to me, Deanna. Where on the Sunshine Coast are you, Deanna? When I say close, she's about 5 hours, Deanna, 6 hours maybe, just depending on where you are. Now we're going to do the other end. And any of you that have watched me know this is the way I make all my album covers. Now, I am a converted person. This is the way Tammy does hers, and I love it. Powell River, so you're probably, as the crow flies, you're not too far, but to drive, you're probably 8 hours from me, because I'm almost at Osoyoos. Well, I'm between Penticton and Oliver, if you know that area. So I'm south of Penticton. There you go. Because our daughter lives in Pemberton, and that's a good 6-hour drive for us when we go over to visit. So I'm doing the long side now, and now the second long side. And the nice thing about using the liquid glue, it does help it go a little quicker when you're assembling. But of course, as I've said many times before, you have to use the adhesive that works best for you. Ah, yes, that's just west of, or east of me. Oh, 3 hours maybe? Haven't been that way in a while. The last few times we've gone to Ontario, we have flown, or flew, I guess is how I should say it. So if you end up with any of these little knobby things after you've glued down your cardstock to your chipboard, I take my scissors and I just give them a little trim. Think of it like a hangnail. Snow, Kim. Oh no, that's yucky. I don't want to see any snow in May. No, no, no snow, no to snow. Had enough of that. So again, we're going to cut out our squares out of the corners. Yeah, no, I don't want snow. That's one of the reasons we've stayed here, is because our winters are quite mild. If it gets, now I'm talking Celsius, so that's going to confuse you guys. If it gets down to like -15, we think it's cold. I don't know, maybe Tanya could do the conversion for me, because I know we talk Celsius, her and I. But I know that the US uses Fahrenheit. So, and I'm not very good at converting in my head. I have to use my phone. Oh, yuck. No, no, I can totally agree with you. No snow. Test run, Heather? I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. You have to get some test run? There's that sign. Well, I hope they all are. The test results are good. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? It's going to be okay, Heather. They're going to be just fine. Okay, so let's do a repeat. Adhesive beside the chipboard, all over those 1-inch tabs. Yes, Karen. Yes, California gets very dry too. Sometimes I think you get drier than we even get. And I think we get dry in the summertime. So the mothers out there, doing anything special this weekend? Yes, thank you, Tanya, for saying that to everybody. Because sometimes when I get going, I forget to look and see the numbers going up. All right. And turn. Let's do the 2 long sides now. Almost ready to assemble this puppy. Burnish, fold it over. Hi, Margaret. Well, thank you. Same back to you. Hope you have a wonderful Mother's Day if I don't talk to you again. You know what, Karen? I totally hear that because that's what they're worried about this year in our part of the world is because we didn't have a lot of precipitation this winter. If we don't get a lot of rain between now and the beginning of July, there's concerns here about fires too. Oh, you've got a graduate coming or happening this year. Good for you, Heather. Another milestone. Oh, good. I'm so glad you're getting it to work, Antonio. And if I say someone's name a little wrong, I have a real problem saying names sometimes, so I apologize ahead of myself. All right, so there's our 2 covers. And here is our spine. And I'm just going to put the pin back in my glue, so when I want it again, it's not going to be plugged. Give another burnish of those 1.5-inch wings. Okay. Now we're going to get started. So if you haven't seen this process before, I use my scoreboard for this. I push my spine piece up to the top of the scoreboard, and then I lay my other piece down first to see that I didn't cut something wrong, because I have been known to do that a time or two. And when I'm happy with my dry measurement, then I remove the backing from the adhesive. Okay. Well, I try my best to say people's names correctly. So just laying it down. And if we're happy, which I think I am. Yes. And I always stand it up just to make sure that I don't have anything that my cover is not hanging over the edge of the spine when I fold it into its book form. So that's the one thing I like to check. And then we're just going to repeat this on the other side, making sure, yes, I'm happy with that dry measurement. And remember, this will be saved into the guide, and it is on my YouTube channel too, or it will eventually be there. It takes a little longer for it to get over onto YouTube. It's got to be processed or something over there. And there is the slim version of the album we are making today. And sorry, my head got in the way there. I'm going to give a good burnish to these 1.5 inch wings. Now I am going to take my little eraser, because right here I see where you can see the number, whatever I had written there. I think it was 1 at, or who knows what it was I had written there. Because the other version is chunky. This looks chunky. Well, Heather, then maybe I should show you this one, because this is what I started with. This is really chunky. This is 4.5 inches wide. But I made it like this because when I started thinking about this album, I said, I want this album to be a place to put lots of recipes, because my husband has lots of recipes. He's the cook. And this version, well, this would be mine. Well, no, I have lots of recipes too, but I thought for somebody that just wanted a few recipes, this might be a better version. That's why I wanted to give you both measurements. All right, so the next piece, which it appears I didn't cut, even though I had it written down. All right, I have to cut a piece of paper for my reinforcement of the spine at 7 by 8 3/8. So you guys are going to have to give me a second. So I said 7 by 8 3/8. And my cutter just isn't in the shot, so that's why I have to step out of it to do this. There we are. And this is that spine reinforcement piece. Yes, I actually did ink the, on my original album, I did ink them with a sepia. That's my go-to most of the time, is a sepia color. So it's just it's a brown. It's kind of like that right there. I just like it. Probably if I could figure a way to make tea become ink, I would use tea. So we're just kind of dry fitting this to make sure we're going to be happy, and I am. And I'm going to show you another little trick today. So sometimes we can see a bit of the chipboard right here. And if you take a black permanent marker, this is a really thin one. I know I've got a thicker one someplace. Let me see if I can find my thicker one. It's going to be around the corner here. Yes. Let's use this thicker one. I'll just take my marker and I'll just color the chipboard, just if it's going to bug you. And today it seems like it's going to bug me, so I'm just going to get rid of that part of it. Who knows why? All right. So The reinforcement piece measures 7 by 8 3/8. So remember, our book is 8.5. So I cut it 1/8 of an inch shorter so we don't have any overhang. And then when we put our pattern paper down, we won't see this reinforcement piece. So let me get out some adhesive. I believe this is 1/2 inch I'm going to use again. You could use another score sheet if you wanted to. My problem with using score sheets for this application is I'm notorious for getting some hanging over the edge. And those of you that watch me a lot know I often lay a white piece of paper underneath what I'm working on because it just allows me to see things a little clearer. And I ripped it and I should have cut it. Give me a second to clean that up. And I just run it around all 4 sides. And I ink most edges too, Teresa, of anything I'm doing. Very rarely do I not ink. I just like the look I get. Kind of finishes it for me. Baby albums sometimes, or if I'm going to be using white cardstock to construct with, I tend not to ink those because let's just say I end up with ink everywhere sometimes. Just running a few down the center. And we'll give this a good burnish once we get this done. Yes, a vintage look. Exactly, Teresa. That sepia just seems to be my go-to. Sometimes I use a light gray one too. I might use that one. But those are my go-tos most of the time. Get our paper out of our way. Burnish all of this. See how much faster it would have went if I would have used score sheets. See how long I can keep my counter or my table cleaned off today. Oh, were you looking for me, Michelle? And was I lost? I know sometimes on Facebook can be real tricky about finding a live. You know it's there. You know you should be able to find it. But for whatever the reason, Facebook can be finicky about those kind of things. And I know you can watch it over on YouTube, but that's my YouTube channel. And coming here to Scrapbookers is so much easier. So let's just do this. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time if my head does get in this shot because I got to be able to see the top and the bottom. So bear with me for just a second. So I am centering this side to side, trying to make sure I've got like 2 inches on either side of my spine, give or take. And when I think I'm going to be happy, I'm just kind of going to drop it. And I think that should make me happy. Sorry about that head in the way. And I want this tool. And so now we're just going to burnish. Let's do a good burnish this way first. And see, with covering it with the marker, if you can see, there's the chipboard and you don't see it because covering it with the black marker is a great way to hide it. And I love how these covers turn out. So I will use my little Jiffy or Sharpie, not Jiffy, Sharpie, to cover the little piece of chipboard that no one's going to see but me. So what I'm doing with this tool is I'm just running it down the space between the spine and the cover. So, and like so. And I am so happy with this. I always love it when I get it to this part because I go, all right, there's the book. Looking good. So there is the cover of our recipe album we're making today. And again, I'll say this is the slim version. It's 3.5. I have already cut the piece of pattern paper that I'm going to cover the inside of the spine with before I put my hinges down. This piece of pattern paper measured 3, so it's the same width. I did at the very beginning of this, Heather. Yeah, no, I did a little walkthrough at the very beginning of this tutorial of the chunky version. So our pattern paper is 3 by 8 3/8, because remember the book itself or the album itself is 8.5. I ink the edges with that sepia. And the reason I do it at 3 is sometimes I don't need to cut it. And this one I won't need to cut. Now, I should tell you a little bit more about why I chose this particular piece of paper. This piece of paper has a little gingham pattern on it. It is going to help me line up my hinges. And I always struggled to get straight hinges. So having a guide like this built into the paper, which it's, of course, Tammy would think of things like that. Maybe she didn't know she was thinking of that, but I'm going to say that's what she was thinking of. It helps lining up the hinges that are going to go on top of it. So let's put some adhesive on the back of it. And, you know, I use paper that doesn't have any guide on it. And I use a pencil then. Who knows, I'll probably use a pencil today too. I just got to pull this down a little bit so I'm going to be able to see where I want it to be. And unfortunately, I believe my head will get in the shot again. So before I make it go flat, or before I really adhere it to the book, I just kind of do one of these to make sure it's not going to impede. Looking top to bottom, I'm happy. Wow, that was easy. Let's give it a good wipe with my baby wipe. Yes, yes. I feel that by 4 my time, when I started at 1 my time, I'm thinking we're going to be done in an hour. Because really, this is the biggest part. The rest of it, once we get the pages started, it's all a rinse and repeat. It's a very, very simple. Hi, Dawn. So glad you could join us today. Whenever I see a name I recognize, I go, oh, I know who that is. Just like Debbie, I know who Debbie is. And Heather and a few others from when I could get down to the US to retreats. Hopefully we'll be able to do that soon again. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. Excuse me. So we're going to set our book aside, and I'm going to pull out the pattern paper or the cardstock that we're using to make our hinge piece. Now, again, I'll remind you, I am using the hinge piece that says 1/2 inch gussets. I need to write slim beside it. So when you see it, you know what? I missed you too from in St. Louis, Heather. Again, it won't be long. No, you're just fine. It's all going to be recorded. We are doing the 1/2 inch gussets for this slim version of this album, but I also gave you the chunky version where it's a 3/4 inch gusset and a 3/4 inch hinge. So this 1/2 inch version is even easier to figure out. Let's move that up there. So our piece of cardstock measures 7 by 8. And then what I did is I took my scoring tool, and I like using my McGill paper maker ball tool, paper flower tool. And I used the middle one, I think, because it's not the smallest. There's your smallest stylus. It's the middle one, because I find this small one will probably puncture the paper. And Tammy does sell this set in the store. So we're scoring at 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, and of course 7 is the end. So let's put this down here. We are going to burnish our 1/2-inch tabs or our score lines. And that's not the tool I want. I would like this one. Like so. Sometimes I glue as I go, but I think for you guys, I will do it the way I have done it other times. So this is going to form our first hinge. Then we're going to leave a gusset. So we're going to count over 1, 2, and then we're going to fold on this score line. Making sure, yes, that's what I wanted to do. And give it a burnish. We're going to burnish these a lot, so it's okay. And then usually what I do is, because I'm using Artisan, I just push it down on itself. And then I count 1, 2. And so this is the next score line I want to fold on. And if you fold on the wrong one, that's okay. And there's our third hinge. So we got 3 happening. 1, 2. So I'm going to fold on that one. And what I'm always watching as I'm burnishing my score lines is my paper even with the side. So in this case, is my paper even with the left-hand side of my cardstock and the right-hand side of my cardstock? Because you don't want your hinge going wonky on you. So that would be number 4. And then to do 5, I just go to the other end and I fold it over. And I burnish it. And I stand it up. So there are our 5 hinges. And let's get some adhesive on the back of them. So I'm just going to start with one side. It doesn't really matter, whichever side you'd like to start with, but I'm going to start with this one, because there really is no left or right now. There's just a top and a bottom. I am using the liquid adhesive because that will speed up our time a little bit. And then when I locate, there it is. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a mess. And then I give it a good burnish. And there is our first hinge adhered. So we're going to do the second one. So we're putting the glue in the valleys right now. And I'll show you on the next one what I meant by valley. And I'm folding it over. And again, I'm keeping an eye out to make sure that I don't have my cardstock going off kilter. It's nice and straight, because you want your pages in your book nice and straight. Burnishing it well. That's probably the biggest thing about using a liquid glue. Well, it's using any adhesive. I like to burnish well. And that way I know I'm getting nice, crisp fold lines. So there's 2. So remember, we're working on the wrong side of this cardstock. So this is the side where we've made the hinge. So this is the wrong side. And I'm hoping, hopefully, you guys should be able to see the valley. And that's where I put my adhesive. Good coverage is what we want. And fold it over. Making sure that everything is nice and straight, which it is, except when it doesn't adhere. Who knows why? Maybe because I hadn't burnished it well enough yet. It's probably my problem. And then we fold back the gusset and give it a good burnish. Okay, so there is number 3. Let's do number 4. So the adhesive goes in the valley, not on the gusset, on the valley wall. Let's call it that. That's a good description of it. And burnish. And fold it back on itself, like so. And again, for the last one, I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to add my adhesive to the valley. I don't think I'll ever lay down a straight line of glue. I watch some tutorials and I go, wow, they have great glue control. Not me. It goes everywhere. Go. Okay. And there are, so let's just make them go both ways. It's a bigger burnishing tool. This is from my Cricut, this tool. So I use it for multi. All right. So there are our 5 hinges. And I always like to do this. I slide it up into the left-hand corner of my scoreboard. And what I'm looking at is I'm looking at this edge of it. And I'm making sure that it is reasonably straight. And I'm going to just do one of these. I'm going to stretch out my top just a touch because it was just slightly, it was a little narrower than the bottom. It's ever so little. So I just a little bit. Don't pull it to rip it. Just pull it to kind of straighten it. Okay, now I'm happier. And I know it was minuscule. You guys probably didn't even see it. But that's just another way I check to make sure that my hinge is square, because I don't like getting these hinges into my albums and then discovering that it is not a square hinge. So let's bring the album back in, or the recipe book back in. And we're just going to kind of look at this. And so on this one, I believe it's going to end up being something like that from top to bottom. So I'm like about 2 dark ones and a half of a light one on this side. I'm probably going to put a little tick mark. And then I move it, of course. Gotta go this way a little bit. So something like that. Excuse my reach. Just gonna put a little mark here, a little mark there, and a mark here at the bottom, just to help me with guiding me to where I'm gonna be laying this down. And now I'm gonna put my liquid adhesive on the back. Yes, I know I'm using liquid adhesive for my hinges. I was the one that said, oh no, I have to use the other. What if I make a mistake? Well, I have also discovered that you have some wiggle room with the glue too. So now I don't have to buy shares and undo. And it smells. I still use it when I have to. But this has worked pretty good for me lately. All right, so there was the adhesive put on the back of the hinges. So what we want to do is we want to line up the bottom, line up the side, and then we want to push it. Oh, we want to do that. Kind of want to take a look. Yes, I am going to measure it once I find something to measure it with. Right here. And I've got about 3/8 there, 3/8 there. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. That'll work for me. Good with that. So yes, any of you that know me know I have a little OCD problem when it comes to some things, and this is one of them. I know it's a homemade item, a handmade item. It's not going to be perfect. Well, manufactured, machine-made items aren't perfect either. But just using my finger, and take my burnishing tool. Just keep burnishing them. Do the last one. Okay. And we can go this way. This way. You want to make sure that right up against that hinge, it is adhered to your book. All right. And I am happy with the looks of that when it's standing up. Looks centered side to side, looks centered top to bottom. So I'd say that was a pretty successful hinge application today. Excellent. All right, so we're going to move this out of our way and get started on our base pages. So for the base pages, move that out of our way. We have an A and we have a B. So our A of the base pages measures 7 by 8, and our B base page measures 7.5 by 8, and there are 5 of them. And on base page B, I scored every base page along the 7.5 inch side at 1/2. Because these pages are bigger than 6 inches wide, that's why you need 2 pieces of paper to make your page. So that's the easy way for me to explain why 2 pieces. So I'm going to get one B. I'm going to just turn these over, and one A. So let's burnish our score line on B. And let's give it a small miter. I believe I should be done with this pencil. And I also believe I'm done with that tool. So let's miter our 1/2 inch tabs. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to do all these base pages at the same time. So they're all the same on the 7.5 inch side. You score it at 1/2. You're going to burnish them. You're going to, yes, Debbie, I did. I posted it in a comment I made a little earlier this afternoon. And then once I get this into the guides, so I've been posting all of my lives under guide 19, you will find that I put a PDF in there with the cutting guide. And number 3, I think. Yeah, I think this is number 3. And again. And Tanya wants to make sure I keep track of time because tonight we're Zooming with the Scrapbookers group. And she wants to make sure I get a chance to sit down before I start that. Okay, Debbie, so it will be in the guide. but it's not there yet. It probably won't get to the guide. It could be as late as tomorrow. I might get it done this afternoon, but I don't know. But I'll get it there as soon as I can. I think if you just Googled my name too, you'd see all the posts I've made. Maybe Tanya can correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Okay, so what I like to do, I'm going to be using my scoreboard again, and I'm going to actually turn my scoreboard around so my head is not going to get in the way. I like to push everything up into, well, now it's the bottom right-hand corner, but it would have been the left top corner. Hi from Sweden. Is it said, I can say the last name, it's Gustafsson, or close enough, I hope. But is it Layla? Nice that you could join us. We're making a recipe folio today. So what I want to do here is I want to make sure that the most important part to keep square is I've laid down page B with the 1/2 inch tab facing up. And then I'm taking base page A and laying it on top of it. And what we're looking for is that the two pages are nice and square on the tab side. And I'll explain why it's not so important for the other side to be square, because that's what you're going to adhere to the hinge. And give it a good burnish. Yeah, I'm happy with all of that. Whoops. So there is one of the base pages. It's just like a card. Give it a good burnish, that score line, or that tab. Score line is a tab. Thanks there, Tanya. Or is that Debbie you're talking to? Oh, I believe it's Debbie you're talking to. There you go, Debbie. Thank you, Tanya, for doing that. You have no idea how much I appreciate that. Okay. So we're going to lay down base page B and put base page A on top of it, pushing it up into the corner. And as you notice, I just lift base page A and just run my adhesive on that 1/2 inch tab. And I do that so that I don't have to line anything up again. As long as I don't move this left hand, I should be able just to drop this back down and it should still be nice and square. And we're going to burnish it. Yeah, we're doing really good for time. Even if we don't get all of the accordion pocket pages done, if I do 1 or 2 with you, you guys could finish those off because it's just a rinse and repeat, as a friend of mine calls it. Okay, so again, base page B on the bottom, base page A on the top. Again, making sure everything is nice and square into the corner. So I'm going to turn this around because there's a little bit of a, I don't know what it was, something I didn't like. Okay, and we just want to make sure. This one seems wonky, so I'm going to stand this one up so I can just take a better look at it. Just for a second. That's going to be fine. Okay. Looking good. Lift it up. Put my adhesive on the 1/2 inch tab. Lay it back down. Give it a good burnish. And then I like to open it and burnish it again. And I believe we're down to the last 2. And I always like to burnish it just before I lay down. Base page B, base page A, line them up, making sure I don't have anything hanging over. And I think I've said this before, I really use my score tool as one of my tools. And I learned that basically from watching Tammy. You know, just use what you've got. There we go. And burnish. Making sure there isn't any glue. And last one. So this is our last base page B. Laying it down with the tab facing up. Again, lay our base page A on top of it. And we're a little out of the square for a second. Push it back up in there. Here we go. Lift it up. Run the bead of glue. And drop base page A back down. Burnish it. Open it up and give it another burnish. We can get rid of that note now. All right. All right. So there are our 5 base pages. Now, what I like to do is I like to make sure I have them all going the same orientation. And the orientation I always like for my book is I like my page that has the tab to be the front of the page. So I hope that makes sense. So this is my page, and this is the 1/2-inch tab that adhered base page A to base page B. So technically, base page B is facing up. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to go through and make sure that's what I've got. Yes. I want it to be like this. And then I want my base page B to be like that. And then the last one, and hopefully I've done this right. What am I doing here again? Losing it. Yes, like that. Okay. So when you have our pages, when I open them, my 1/2-inch tab is glued to the back page. How's that sound for an explanation? So let's bring the book back in. I'm going to move my pages over to one side. I now have 2 dry wipes out here. We are starting to adhere the pages from the back of the book to the front of the book. And all I do with this first one is my page is the same height as my spine. And I'm just, no, it's adhered nicely. It's just my imagination. So I lay my base page right up to the edge of the hinge system. I'm going to fold my hinge down. And all I'm kind of doing here is I'm doing a slight dry fit. And what I'm looking at is I want to make sure that my page is square. And I'm going to need my piece of white paper again as my guide. Yes. So again, I'm using my hand just to keep everything in place. Now remember, we're starting at the back of the book, not the front of the book. And I'll explain why I like to start at the back of the book in a second. Right now, I'm only running my adhesive along the hinge. And then I am folding the hinge over onto my base page. I need my tool and my wipe. Burnish it well. Remember, the art glitter glue does dry clear, which is a good thing in my world. Now, you have two choices here. You can add your adhesive to the hinge and the bottom of the page and leave the top open as a pocket, or you can glue that shut. On my original one, I left the top open, but I'm probably going to go back and glue those shut because I think we're going to have enough weight on those pages. The other thing you should do before you glue the back of the page down or the front of the page down is just make sure that nothing's going to impede the turning of the page. So today I'm going to add adhesive along the top. I'm going to add adhesive along the bottom. And then I'm adding adhesive. I don't go right down to the edge of the hinge by the gusset. I try to stay up a little bit from that. And then I just use my hand, making sure that it's closed nicely. This would be a place to use the bigger burnisher that I just put away. What else is new? You put it away and then you need it again. And there is one of our pages glued in to our album. And I love these pages because they really do lay flat. Okay, now let's take page number 2. And again, we're doing the same thing. What we really want to keep an eye on here is that page 2 is square with page 1. I always use, just like making a waterfall, check the waterfall above to make sure that everything is nice and square. And then I'm going to open it up because I'm not happy with something I see here. So you want to make sure it's top to bottom, that it's nice and square with the hinge, but the most important part is over here, like so. Happy with that. See if I'm still going to be happy over here when I lay this down. Yes. So all I do is I like to just make sure I don't have anything hanging over the top or the bottom of the hinge. And if I did, I might need to do a small trim. Those things have been known to happen. Because yes, you cut the paper all the same size, but sometimes you might be a hair off. And depending on how much those things bug you, will depend on if you feel you need to address it. All right, I'm going to just do one of these, make sure I haven't had a glue mess happen, and I haven't, just a little one. Burnish it again. Then I want to close my page, making sure I'm going to be happy. Yes, I am. Okay. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so we're going to add adhesive to the top, adhesive to the bottom, and then adhesive on our hinge, but don't go right down to the bottom. All right, and then just want to make sure I'm happy, and I am. I'm going to burnish. Oops. See, that's why you don't want it right down at the bottom when you do something like that, so you don't end up with a mess. Okay. Let's just make sure everything's still going to turn. Yes, it's beautiful. Okay, page number 3. Like I say, this is just a rinse and repeat that we're doing right now. Nothing, it's just repeating what you've already done on the other two, just making sure that on this right-hand side, the pages are nice and square. Okay, and when we're happy, we're going to add adhesive to the underside of the hinge, the back side of the hinge, whatever word you want to describe. where I'm putting the glue right now. Fold it, burnish it. Actually, I'm doing really well for time because it's 3:30 Mountain Standard Time, right, Tanya? And we don't have to be ready to Zoom until 5:30 Mountain Standard Time, or Mountain Daylight Time, I guess is what I should call it. So I'm running adhesive across the top, across the bottom, and then on the hinge itself, not going to the bottom. Folding it over. Oops, that's a big mess. And burnish. And now to our next one. These pages are going in nicely today. I always like it when it's like that. Add our adhesive to the hinge. Fold this over. Burnish it. You guys are really quiet. Mind you, that's probably a good thing because then I can't make too big of a mistake or something. I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. So let's add our adhesive along the bottom, along the top, along the hinge. Like a little lower than I like to go. Oh, well, it'll be fine, right? Right. Let's get some more glue there. Okay. And see, that's why you don't want to get too low, so you don't have any glue that you're going to see. But it happens. Okay, and we're ready to put our last page in. So again, we want to measure it dry fit. Making sure we're happy over on this side. We're going to be happy here. Lift it up, move this back. I'm going to show you guys something on this hinge when I get it all done, because this used to really bug me a lot. I used to think I had made a huge mistake. And I've discovered that no, you've got to make choices. Okay, so again, we're going to add our adhesive along the bottom. And we're going right over that 1/2 inch tab. Along the top. So we want that sealed shut. Then run your adhesive on your hinge itself. Let me go back to the bottom here and run it down just a little lower. There we go. Okay, now we're going to fold it over. And there we are. We have 5 pages in our album. And the last one. Love it. Now, what I wanted to show you, and I know it's going to be hard for you guys to see on the black paper, but maybe if I hold it up close enough. If you look, see how we're off a little? That's okay. We're never going to see it. Trust me. It's more important to have this side nice and straight than the hinge, the base page attached to the hinge nice and straight. Because by the time you get pattern paper on here and you get the pocket on here, you're never even going to see that. So I just thought I would mention that so that it doesn't mess with us, or probably more like it doesn't mess with me. All right. So I'm going to move our book back out because now we're going to start making the accordion pocket. And for the accordion pocket, and I didn't score these, so I'm going to score them now with you guys. I cut cardstock at 5.5 by 8. So we're going to score them on the 5.5-inch side. Well, you know, Dawn, I struggled with the hinges too. And then finally, I just decided which side is more important to me. Do I want my pages straight on the right-hand side, or am I going to worry about what's happening over here where it attaches to the hinge? And you know what? Now that I only worry about whether my pages are straight on this side, anything that happens over here, I can cover it up with pattern paper and we don't even see it. So that's one of my tricks for today. So I'm scoring it at 1/2 inch on the 5.5-inch side. And we're going to do all of these at the same time. Because like I said at the beginning of this album has the same page construction on each page. Because it's a recipe book. It's supposed to be about being able. Well, Dawn, so do I. You have no idea how much OCD I have. Good, I'm glad, because that's what these classes are all about. It's about you guys having the opportunity maybe to pick up one new trick. Or as I used to say when I was working, give me something else to put in my tool belt that I can use when I need it. So I'm folding on those score lines, burnishing the 1/2-inch tabs. I always fold away from myself. So when I do the next one, I don't think I've mentioned this for a while. So there's my 1/2-inch tab. I make my paper fold over onto the 1/2-inch tab. That way it keeps everything nice and straight. Again, just another little tip. And burnish. And the last one. And it's okay if the writing is on there. We're going to cover it with pattern paper. Nobody's going to see it. So let's do this. We're going to miter these. And we're going to do all our burnishing for the other pieces too at this time. And then we'll see how far we get. And if we look like we're going to be on a time crunch, I want to make sure I show you how I made my acetate pocket. And you know what other thing would look nice in there? If you were giving this as a bridal gift or shower gift, is, I don't know, maybe the two mothers in there, maybe the bride, you know, maybe you could get her holding a special dish, you know, her go-to dish. I don't know. You guys you'll think of all kinds of things to use it for. And I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. That's always the best part of this. Yeah, I have my ideas, but then I like to see where you guys take this to. Okay, so those are the 5 accordion, the pocket, as I'm calling it. Then you need the closure. So the closure, bring the book back in. It's just a belly band closure with a magnet under it. So it's easy peasy. And they measure 2 by 6.5. And on the 6.5 side, I scored at 1/2. So again, we're going to burnish these. I am going to round my corners on these bands. And I'm going to do that now because it's not going to matter. I don't need to miter these 2-inch bands. You know what? That's a great idea, Dawn. Actually, this one would be really good for that because there's lots. Like I say, maybe the slim version if that's what you're going to do. Unless you like lots of different recipes. So I am using the crocodile corner chomper that Tammy sometimes has in the store. I'm using my go-to, which is the 3/8. And I'm just rounding. I am not rounding the 1/2 inch tab side. I am rounding the other end on the 6.5 inch side. So let's just keep going. And second to last, you do that. My crocodile was giving me trouble, and so I punched a bunch of tinfoil and it fixed it. So I was really happy with that. I had heard that trick worked, and I had the opportunity to try it. So now we need the accordion binding strips. So this is what's going to hold this flap or pocket to the actual base page. So we needed to make 10 of those because you're going to need one for either side. And they measure 2 by 4 7/8. So 7/8, 4 7/8 is 1 tick line back from the 5 on your scoreboard. And in your score tool, it could be 2 tick marks back. It just depends, not your score tool, your cutting tool. It just depends on how your cutting tool is marked. And then on the 2 inch side, we scored it 1/2, 1, and 1.5. And then I like to fold on the middle score line to start with. I'll show you once I get one made. And then I like to open it up and fold back both sides. And that's just what I like to do. If you have a way that you like it to do it, use your method. It goes like this. And we'll use the bigger one. So we're just going to repeat that 10 times. And as I've said before, it is the burnishing. Oh, good, Tina. I am so glad. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had looked at what some of the other designers had done, and I went, yeah, that's nice, but no, I've got to do something different. And then I got thinking, how do you like to keep your recipes? Well, right now, my husband's recipes sit in a basket with a paperclip around his different menu items. You know what? I did Tammy's Saucy album a few years ago. You'd have to Google or search in the group for that particular album or go over to her YouTube channel. And I made that for my niece. And what I put in it for her was her grandmother's, so my husband's mother's recipes. And I just photocopied them. So a lot of them were in my mother-in-law's handwriting, and she loved it. So let's keep going. This is, again, like I said before, this is a lot of rinse and repeat that we're doing. Almost done. And Tina, I can't wait to see pictures of what you come up with. That is one of my favorite parts of this. I've gone back to my old method. So I'll go back to what I was doing so I don't confuse you guys. Fold in the middle. Open it up. Fold one side in. Turn it around. Fold the other side in. And then fold it all back on itself and burnish again. Well, you know what, Debbie, it gives you lots of different ideas, or maybe you'll pick and choose from the different designers and make your own. Like, you know, come up with one that's your idea. There's just so many. There's such, this group of designers they're just so talented. I'm sometimes humbled to be in their presence. Because I learn so much from watching them. Last one. Notice how I switch between my burnishing tools? Whatever's handy. Oh, the shower's a week away. This is the one then, Debbie. This one's fast. This one was very fast, and some of it was because it's such a rinse and repeat. All right, so let's get started here. We are going to take the pocket, as I called it, or the flap, whichever word works for you. And what we want to do is we want to see, just give me a second, I need that white piece of paper again. We want to make sure that we're not overhanging on the right-hand side. And I'm kind of keeping it back a bit from the edge of the hinge. I'm probably keeping it back. It's not quite 1/8 of an inch. And I'll show you in a second why, because when you open and close the book, I want to maintain the lay flat feature of the pages as much as possible. So now fold it back. If you don't like sticky fingers, my method of adhering my pages may not be the one you want to adopt. But I was a preschool teacher, so a little mess has never bothered me. Okay, so there's the first part. Awesome. Then we want to take 2 of our, what did I refer to these as? Accordion binding strips. Now, for somebody that's OCD, and probably should have been labeled attention deficit as a child in school, we'll see if I can explain this the right way. There is our strip. I have a folded edge here and a folded edge there. When I lift it up and I look at it, I see an M. Does that make sense how I'm explaining this? So now with the M facing up, or our valley here, I'm taking it and I am turning it this way. I want the raw edges of my binding strip to be facing to the inside. So what I want them to do is my raw edges are to the inside of the page. I don't want my raw edges facing to the outside of the book because I don't want to see any of a raw edge when I pull up this flap. So again, my raw edges on my binding strip are facing to the inside of the book. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. I am first going to add adhesive to this side. So this is the side that's actually going to adhere to the flap. And what I'm doing is I am going right to the very, except I want my white paper over here now. I am going to the very bottom to adhere this. I'm going right to that fold line. And I'm going right to the edge of the flap, the pocket, whatever word helps you to understand what we're doing. And the reason I prefer the wet glue to do this, it gives you a little bit of wiggle room so you can lift it up, do one of these, making sure that nothing's hanging over. Okay, I'm happy and I'm burnishing. Okay, the big thing you want to remember is you don't want this binding strip to be over the top of the flap. So we're going to have to rotate our book around the opposite way. So now the top of your flap or your pocket is on your right-hand side. Here is your other binding strip. The 2 raw edges are facing in to the middle of the flap. Get my little white piece of paper underneath it again. Add my adhesive. And again, I'm lining it up with the top of the flap and the edge of the flap without going over, like that. Then I'm going to stand it up just to make sure that it didn't go over. It did not. Give it a good burnish. Make sure that if there's any glue that you've got rid of it. Now you have two choices here. You can either adhere the bottom of your accordion hinge or your accordion binding system with a little glue, or you can leave it loose. If you think these are going to bug you, put a little glue there and a little glue here. And I'll show you what I meant by that. So I'm just going to hold this for just a second. I sometimes do this, I sometimes don't. So we're going to have to hold it unless I get one of my trusty clips out. There we go. Didn't need the clip. So I'm going to move over to this side. So there's your binding strip that's attached to the book. I'm adding a little glue here, adhering those two together, and then a little glue here, adhering the top two together. Okay, I'll show you on one that's loose. There we go. All right, now here's what we want to do. We are going to put adhesive on each binding strip. So on the 1/2 inch tab that has the raw edge facing into the middle of the book, the folded edges facing to the outside of the book. And then I'm going to rotate my orientation, and literally I am just bringing it up. And as I bring it up, I kind of make sure that I'm happy with how it's laying down. Might want to turn it around so I can see it better. You know, it's so much easier when you're not filming, because then you can turn your book any way you need to turn it. And there is page 1 in our book. So there it is. There is one accordion pocket, and look at the size. Look at how much room you've got for recipes in there. Now we're going to take our band that is going to come across the front of this pocket, and the idea of the band is to keep all the stuff that's going to be in that pocket from ending up all over the place. And what I like to do is I like to take my famous Tim Holtz ruler that has a 0. I like to take it, and I know that my page is 8 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little tick mark here. Then I know that my closure is 2 inches. And I'm going to make a, whoops, let's get the 0. And put a little tick mark right there. Add adhesive to the back of this. Line them up. So I'm lining up my 2 tick marks. I hope you guys can see this. Let's do this. It's hard on the block paper. So there's my 2 tick marks, and I'm lining them up. And that way I know that this is centered top to bottom. Give it a good burnish, like so. Then I'm going to take a minus and a positive magnet. Let them attach to each other. Do not need that. Definitely don't need this. Done pretty good today keeping my work surface tidy. I am going to remove one side, as the adhesive off one side of these magnets. And I'm going to attach my first magnet to my little buckle And I'm coming down about an inch in halfway from each side. I pull it off. I add a little score tape. Like I say, don't know where I learned this trick, but it's one way so that I don't lose my magnets and they don't rip my papers, and hopefully I never lose a magnet after I've put my pattern paper down, because then that would be awful. And close it. Just kind of let it fall. And then I pull it sideways, just a little bit, because you don't want to lift straight up, because this magnet will just probably come up with it. Come up with the one that's on the other side. And there is page 1 complete. So we're going to move to the back. So I want to do a belly band. So I'm just going to set this stuff aside. I'm just going to see where we're standing time-wise, because I know some of you guys are going to Zoom tonight and probably want to eat before you Zoom. So our belly bands for the back of each page measure 2.5, I should say, by 9. And on the 9-inch side, I scored at 1/2. And then I rotate it to the other end and I scored at 1/2. So let's get one and burnish it. We don't need to miter these half-inch tabs. Again, if you want to measure for accuracy to make sure that your belly band is right in the middle, you could do the same thing I did with the band on the other side. But in this particular case, I'm just going to, as I call it, wing it. So I'm going to lift it up, add adhesive here. And push it down. We're doing really well for time. And some adhesive here. And again, glue it down. Now, the thing you want to make sure is that you haven't glued this belly band to any place you don't really want it to be glued to, like so. And there is the front and back of what each of your pages is going to look like. And you're just going to rinse and repeat on every page, just keeping in mind that when you lay down the pocket, you want to keep it back a 1/16 to an 1/8 away from the edge of where the base page meets the hinge. Good night. So glad you could join us. Oh, yes, it would be midnight here. Well, this will stay recorded. Okay, Leah, good night. So that's what you're going to do on all 5 or all 4 of the pages that are left. So we're going to just stop at that part of it. And we're going to go to what's going on the inside front cover. On the inside front cover, I said I was making a little acetate pocket. So the first thing we have to do is we need to cut a piece of cardstock that measures 8 and, let's start with the 8.5 by 8 3/8. And then we're going to, on the 8.5-inch side, score at 1/2, turn to the 8 3/8 side, score at 1/2, rotate it completely around and score at 1/2. We're going to burnish those score lines. That's very important here. Burnish this score line. Our last score line. So we're just making a huge pocket. And if you wanted it to be an accordion pocket, she's from Sweden, I think, is where Layla, I think it's how it said, is from. So let's do some mitering. So the first thing we want to do is cut through the X at the bottom of the pocket, like so. And when I'm talking X, I'm talking for these 2 score lines intersect. And again on this side. Then at the top, we're just going to miter. And we're going to miter. Okay. Let's get rid of that. All right, let's burnish those score lines again. It was. But yes, when she says it's almost midnight there, it would be. All right, so we're going to use our spacing tools again. So remember the spacers that we use when we make our covers? We're going to use them for this application because I want a 1-inch border all the way around. I'll turn my scoreboard around so my head's not going to get in the shot. We are going to use our spacers and 1 inch at the top. And we're going to put 1 inch along this. Hold on here a second. Something's not laying flat. There we go. 1 inch along this left-hand side. And I'm going to draw a line this way. And I'm going to draw a line this way. And I'm not going right over to the far edge. I'm leaving it back about 1 inch, give or take. So that's the one line we're going to draw. Now we're going to rotate this way. There we go. And again, so the two sides that I didn't draw a line on yet, I'm putting my one spacer. I'm putting my second spacer. I'm going to hold them in place. Not quite sure what that is. That could be some dry glue. Who knows? And another line and another line. And that is the square we're going to cut out. Then I'm going to take my cutting tool. And I'm going to move my scoreboard so I have a flat surface. Now with the Fiskars, this is really simple because we do have this 1 inch line that we could refer to. So all I'm doing with my blade is I'm lining my blade up with the pencil line I made. So there's my pencil line, there's my blade, and I know for my Fiskars anyway, that what I hold on to is the center of the blade. So that's where the blade is. I'm pushing down, and then I'm going down all the way until I line up with it on that end. So I'm going to turn this so you guys can see. So I'm lined up again with the pencil line I drew. I'm going to take it out. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to close things up. Whoops, don't move it. Yes, that was a little huff. There we go. I'm going to be back just a touch there. Push it down. And again, we're just going to, because we might have to do some cutting by hand, and that's going to be okay. And you can cut this out by hand, whatever works for you. I just found that this is the easiest way for me to accomplish this task and keep somewhat of a straight line. So I'm pushing it down. Again, I'm just going, and it's good to have a new blade or not a blade that you've cut chipboard with to do this, because you want a nice clean cut. Okay. Again, I'm laying it when it wants to move. Yes, and I'm cutting down to that pencil line and lifting it up. And we might have to do a little hand cutting here now. That one's free. Let's see if this one's free on this side. So I'm just going to give it a little trim. There we go. And we just got this one still to cut. So what you don't want to do is pull it. Because if you pull it, that could be when you end up with a little hangnail, as I call them. And there's what you're left with. And that, to me, is the easiest way to make my inside cut. for my acetate pocket. If I've got any pencil lines, this is the time to get rid of them. It's the only one I've got. So the piece of acetate I'm using measures 6 3/4 by 6 3/4. I'm not using liquid glue to adhere my acetate to the backside of this pocket. It's just what I'm not doing. I've never tried to use glue because knowing myself, I believe I would be too messy with it. I'm just using a 1/4 inch score tape. 1/8 of an inch would work too. I don't know if I'd go much bigger than a 1/4 inch. 3/8 probably would be fine. If you give me a second, we'll look at it when we stick it to the back or the inside. But I have watched some people and they use the liquid glue. I just probably don't have the patience for liquid glue for this application. All right. Now, let's give it a gentle burnish. And the only reason I'm saying gentle is because it's acetate. We don't want to scratch the acetate. And again, get rid of my little sticky note. I'm turning the pocket over, so I'm now working on the inside of the pocket. And I believe 3/8 might be a bit tricky because as you can see, I could have done this 6 3/4 by 7 just to have a little bit more wiggle room top to bottom, but this is going to work fine. So let's remove the adhesive off the dry adhesive, or the adhesive backing off the dry adhesive. Like so. And again, line it up. And it doesn't have to be perfect because nobody's going to see this. The only thing you want to make sure is that you've got it down. It's going to be fine, even though it's a little further on one side than the other, just fine. And there is your pocket. Now, we are going to be adhering this pocket on top of the pattern paper. So we can't, it's really difficult to slide this pattern paper down inside the pocket. But if we cut our pattern paper and adhere it first and then put the pocket on top of it, it's going to be perfect. So our piece of pattern paper I cut, it measures 7 3/8 by 8 3/8. And what I'm going to be doing with this piece of pattern paper is I'm going to be adhering it top to bottom, side to side, centering. So let's add some dry adhesive, or the wet adhesive to the back of it. Around the edges. So it's just like how you add your pattern paper to anything else. I ink my edges with the sepia. And then again, centering, making sure that you're not going to put your pattern paper down and it's going to end up getting in the way of the cover folding. Can move it just slightly. There we go. And burnish it well. Like so. And then just do a little dry fit. So you want to keep this pocket on top of the pattern paper. So kind of use your pattern paper as your guide, keeping it out of the where the front cover folds. So I'm going to add my adhesive. Now with this particular pocket, I am not going to put any tape at the bottom of it because it's a decorative pocket. Probably you're not going to be pulling stuff in and out of this pocket very often. You could write your little note that you want to write to whoever you're giving this to. Could be a picture of you and the person you're giving it to. You know, could be a favorite recipe. It could be the recipe that you're known for. So again, I'm just lining it up with the edge of the pattern paper. I did put in the cutting guide or my little tutorial what size the mats were. But of course, you could make them whatever size you want to make them, as long as they're going to fit the pocket. And there is how simple it is to put an acetate pocket into an album. And I'll just bring back the original just to show you guys something. So all I did for my pattern paper is the two pieces that go along the top, I put them side to side. They're 1/8 of an inch smaller than the border. So that's 7/8 of an inch by the width. And then the two that go down each side, I measured them in between and cut them to fit. So everybody's book will be slightly different. So just measure your own book, just keeping in mind I used 1/8 of an inch smaller. Okay, so that's the inside of the front cover. Now we're going to flip this book all the way to the back, and it is a very simple pocket. Get my scoreboard back in here. And my pocket measures 4.5 by 8.5. And I did say in my instructions, less a 1/16. We'll see if I need a 1/16 on this one. So on the 4.5 inch side, I scored it 1/2. Then I rotated it to the 8.5 inch side, scored it 1/2 an inch on both ends. And I always like to score from my left-hand side of the scoreboard. Keeps everything nice and straight. Burnish those score lines. So this is just your standard pocket. And we're going to, as I say, cut through the X. Just through the X, not through above the X or below the X, because below the X you get bulk, above the X you get a hole. All right. And then let's burnish again. Bring the book back in. And again, with this pocket, we want to keep it as far to the right as possible because we don't want it impeding the closing of the book. So we're going to put adhesive along the bottom 1/2 inch tab. Like so, and I'm laying it down so it's butting right up with the bottom of the book and the side of the book. And just for, yeah, it's going to be just fine. Do that again. Yeah. Okay, give it a good burnish. Sorry, I had to lift it up just to make sure it wasn't hanging over. It looks like it is, but it isn't. So I'm going to take some of my cello tape, since we won't give credit to a brand for this stuff. And that's just so things will slide in and out of the pocket really nice and nothing catches on that little 1/2 inch tab. Okay, and we're going to add adhesive to 1/2" tab on my right, 1/2" tab on my left. And I'm hoping this is not going to be a problem. No, it's not. I'm going to do this and see. Yeah, it's going to be fine. Like so. Burnish and burnish. And there's your pocket for the inside back cover. And again, it's just a spot to, you know what, I'm not going to be happy with this because it's just hanging over just a little bit. So we're going to do one of these. We're going to lift it while we can. And we're just going to fold it in. And I'm just using my hand to just manipulate the score line. I'm going to see if I'm going to be happy with this now. Yes. Okay. It's probably still wet enough that it'll... So all I did is I rolled on the score line just to make it fit just a little bit better because I wasn't happy with what I was seeing. I'm happy now though, because I can't see any overhang. That's what I was seeing. I was seeing just a little bit of an overhang. Yeah, I'm close, but I can live with that. And when I open it up, I'm good with what I'm seeing. Okay, so let's close this up. So here is the slim version of the What's Cooking folio. It certainly has a lot of room in it still. You'll just go ahead and you will do your accordion pocket on the front of the pages, do a belly band on the back, making sure to keep your accordion pocket up just about 1/8 of an inch. And that is what we created today. So I hope you liked the tutorial. I really hope you post pictures of your creations. If you've got any questions, please feel free to message me. You know how to get a hold of me, or leave a comment in the description or wherever. If it's YouTube, I think you leave the comment. Yeah, leave the comment in the description on Facebook. I guess it's the same thing. And for those of you I'm going to see in about 1 hour and 15 minutes, we need to have some supper. Those of us that it is supper time, those of us that it is not. We'll see you in like I say, 1 hour and 15 minutes if you're part of that Zoom group. And I hope everybody has a wonderful Mother's Day. And I'll see you when I got my next tutorial ready. You guys have a great day, and we'll talk soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.